The enemy commander smiled as he locked her in the cell. One American soldier won't last a week here. 3 days later, his guards started disappearing. By the seventh day, he realized the prisoner had become the predator. Meet Staff Sergeant Alexis Reaper Morgan, 29 years old. Dark brown hair, usually braided in military regulation style, green eyes that had seen more combat than most seasoned veterans. For 4 years, she had served as a combat medic with the 75th Ranger Regiment. But her medical training was only part of what made her one of the most dangerous soldiers in the U.S. Army. Alexis had grown up in the mountains of North Carolina, raised by a grandfather who was a retired Green Beret and a grandmother who was a Cherokee tracker. From childhood, she had learned skills that couldn't be taught in any military school. How to move through hostile territory without leaving traces, how to survive on minimal resources for extended periods, and how to kill silently when necessary. Her grandfather, Master Sergeant James "Ghost" Walker Morgan, had been one of the Army's most legendary Special Forces operators during the Vietnam War. He had conducted long-range reconnaissance missions deep in enemy territory, often operating alone for weeks while gathering intelligence and eliminating high-value targets. "Little warrior," he would tell her during their weekend training sessions in the Blue Ridge Mountains, "survival isn't about having the best equipment or the most training. It's about thinking like your enemy, using their strengths against them, and never giving up when others think you're defeated." James Morgan's philosophy had been forged during 3 tours in Vietnam, where he had learned that conventional military tactics were often insufficient against enemies who knew the terrain intimately and used unconventional warfare to neutralize technological advantages. His approach emphasized psychological warfare, environmental adaptation, and the importance of becoming invisible while making the enemy visible. During her childhood training with her grandfather, Alexis had learned to think like both hunter and prey simultaneously. She understood how to track enemies through subtle environmental signs, while masking her own presence so completely that even experienced trackers couldn't follow her movements. These weekend exercises had been comprehensive survival courses disguised as family camping trips. Alexis learned to find water in seemingly barren landscapes, create shelter from natural materials that provided both protection and concealment, and identify edible plants that could sustain her for weeks in wilderness environments. Her grandmother, Sarah Silent Wind Morgan, had taught her Cherokee tracking techniques that had been passed down through generations of hunters and warriors. These skills included reading environmental signs that most people couldn't detect, moving through natural terrain without disturbing the landscape, and understanding animal behavior patterns that could reveal human presence. Sarah Morgan's lessons had included traditional Cherokee stealth techniques that allowed hunters to approach prey animals without detection. These methods required understanding wind patterns, animal psychology, and the ability to move in harmony with natural rhythms rather than fighting against them. The combination of Cherokee wisdom and Green Beret innovation had created a unique skill set that made Alexis exceptionally effective in environments where traditional military training was insufficient. She could disappear into almost any landscape while maintaining the tactical awareness necessary for combat operations. Alexis had enlisted in the Army at 18, driven by a desire to serve her country and follow in her grandfather's footsteps. Her initial training scores were exceptional, but what set her apart was her ability to think tactically under extreme pressure while maintaining the compassion necessary for medical care. During basic training, her instructors had noticed that Alexis seemed to anticipate tactical situations before they developed, positioning herself advantageously while other recruits were still processing changing circumstances. Her ability to read environmental cues and human behavior patterns gave her situational awareness that exceeded standard military training. She had been selected for Ranger training based on her physical fitness, tactical intelligence, and psychological evaluations that indicated exceptional resilience under stress. The training had been brutal, designed to eliminate candidates who couldn't handle the mental and physical demands of elite military operations. Ranger training had pushed Alexis beyond normal human endurance through exercises that simulated the worst possible combat conditions. Sleep deprivation, extreme physical stress, and psychological pressure were designed to identify soldiers who could maintain effectiveness when conventional training broke down. But Alexis had thrived in environments that broke other soldiers. Her childhood training and survival techniques, combined with natural athletic ability and fierce determination, made her one of the top graduates in her Ranger class. The medical training component of her military education had been equally demanding, requiring her to master life-saving techniques while under the stress of simulated combat conditions. Combat medics needed to provide medical care while engaging enemy forces, making split-second decisions about triage priorities and maintaining tactical awareness in chaotic environments. Alexis's unique background had given her advantages that other medics didn't possess. Her understanding of human anatomy, combined with Cherokee knowledge of natural remedies and Green Beret training in improvised weapons, created capabilities that exceeded standard medical corps training. Her call sign, Reaper, had been earned on her second deployment to Afghanistan when she had conducted a solo rescue mission to extract wounded soldiers from an Afghan ambush. Using medical knowledge and combat skills in combination, she had eliminated multiple enemy fighters while providing life-saving care to American casualties. The rescue mission had required her to infiltrate a Taliban-controlled valley where an American patrol had been pinned down by enemy fire. Standard rescue protocols would have required air support and additional ground forces, but the tactical situation made conventional rescue impossible without risking additional casualties. Instead, Alexis had used Cherokee stealth techniques to approach the ambush site undetected, then systematically eliminated Taliban fighters while providing medical care to American casualties. Her approach had been so unexpected that enemy forces never realized they were being attacked by a single soldier until their operational capability had been completely destroyed. The mission that led to her capture had begun as routine medical support for a special forces operation in the mountains of Afghanistan. Alexis was assigned to provide medical coverage for a team conducting reconnaissance of suspected terrorist training camps in remote valleys near the Pakistani border. The operation had been carefully planned based on intelligence reports indicating minimal enemy presence in the target area. The Special Forces team would establish observation posts, gather intelligence on terrorist activities, and coordinate airstrikes against confirmed targets. The intelligence assessment had been based on satellite surveillance, electronic intercepts, and human intelligence from local informants. All sources suggested that the target area contained abandoned terrorist facilities that could be safely investigated by a small reconnaissance team. But intelligence reports are never perfect, and the enemy had been expecting American operations in the region. What should have been a covert reconnaissance mission became a coordinated ambush that separated Alexis from her team and left her stranded deep in hostile territory. The ambush had been planned by Commander Rashid Hassan, who had been studying American tactical procedures for months in preparation for exactly this type of operation. Hassan understood that American forces relied on technological advantages and superior firepower, making them vulnerable to unconventional tactics that negated these advantages. The ambush had been triggered when the Special Forces team approached what appeared to be an abandoned terrorist camp. Hidden enemy forces had allowed the Americans to enter a killing zone before opening fire from concealed positions that commanded every escape route. Hassan's fighters had used caves and natural fortifications to create overlapping fields of fire that made escape impossible through conventional tactical movement. The ambush design forced American soldiers into predetermined channels where they could be isolated and captured rather than simply eliminated. In the chaos of the firefight, Alexis had been providing medical care to wounded team members when an explosion separated her from the main group. When the smoke cleared, she found herself alone, surrounded by enemy fighters who had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. The separation had been caused by a precisely timed explosive device that created a rock slide, blocking the route between Alexis and the main team. Hassan's fighters had planned this contingency to isolate individual soldiers who could be captured for intelligence and propaganda purposes. Commander Rashid Hassan had been planning this ambush for months, using intelligence gathered from captured American equipment and interrogated prisoners. At 45 years old, he led a terrorist cell that specialized in capturing American soldiers for propaganda purposes and intelligence gathering. Hassan had built his reputation on breaking captured Americans through psychological torture and prolonged interrogation. His methods were designed to extract information about military operations while creating propaganda videos that could be used to demoralize American forces. Hassan's interrogation techniques had been developed through years of experience with captured soldiers and consultation with former intelligence officers who had defected from various government agencies. His approach combined physical deprivation with psychological manipulation designed to break down resistance systematically. The compound where Hassan operated had been specifically designed for holding and interrogating captured soldiers. The facility included soundproofed interrogation rooms, isolation cells designed to break down psychological resistance, and medical facilities where prisoners could be kept alive during extended interrogation periods. When Hassan's fighters brought Alexis to his compound, he saw an opportunity to achieve multiple objectives: gather intelligence about American Special Forces operations, create propaganda showing a female American soldier in captivity, and demonstrate his power over the most elite American military units. Hassan had captured several American soldiers over the years, but never a female Ranger medic. He believed that Alexis would be particularly valuable for propaganda purposes, as her capture could be used to demonstrate the vulnerability of American women in combat roles. "One American soldier won't last a week here," Hassan told his men as they locked Alexis in a concrete cell beneath his command center. "Especially a woman who thinks she can fight like a man. We will break her spirit and use her to send a message to the Americans." The compound where Alexis was held was a fortified position carved into the mountainside, designed to withstand airstrikes and ground assaults. Hassan commanded approximately 40 fighters who had spent years learning American tactics and developing countermeasures for Special Forces operations. The facility included weapon storage areas, communication equipment, training facilities, and detention cells where prisoners were held for interrogation. The entire complex was designed to be invisible from aerial surveillance, while providing defensive advantages against any rescue attempt. Hassan's initial plan was to use traditional interrogation techniques to break Alexis psychologically before beginning the intelligence extraction process. He believed that isolation, sleep deprivation, and psychological pressure would quickly reduce her to a compliant prisoner who would reveal military secrets. But Hassan had made a critical error in his assessment of Alexis Morgan. He saw a female medic who had been separated from her unit, assuming that her medical training indicated weakness, rather than the tactical intelligence that made her one of the Army's most dangerous soldiers. During her first 3 days in captivity, Alexis had been conducting reconnaissance of the compound, while Hassan's men assumed she was simply recovering from the shock of capture. Every time guards brought food or conducted inspections, she was gathering intelligence about their routines, security procedures, and the facility's layout. Her medical training gave her advantages that Hassan's men couldn't recognize. She understood human anatomy well enough to know exactly how to incapacitate or kill without making noise. Her knowledge of drugs and medical equipment provided opportunities for creating weapons or incapacitating substances from materials that seemed harmless. More importantly, her Cherokee tracking skills allowed her to read environmental signs that revealed information about guard movements, shift changes, and the facility's daily routine. She could hear conversations through walls, detect movement patterns through vibrations, and identify weaknesses in security procedures that her captors didn't know existed. On the fourth night of her captivity, Alexis began implementing an escape plan that would transform her from prisoner to predator. But instead of simply escaping, she had decided to systematically eliminate Hassan's entire operation while gathering intelligence that could be used in future American operations. The first guard to disappear was Mahmoud, a young fighter who had been assigned to night security for the detention area. Alexis had identified him as the weakest link in the security chain, inexperienced, overconfident, and prone to breaking established procedures. When Mahmoud entered her cell to conduct a routine inspection, Alexis used medical knowledge to render him unconscious without making noise. She then used his own equipment to restrain him while she acquired his weapons and keys to other areas of the compound. But instead of immediately escaping, she hid Mahmoud's body and assumed his patrol route, using darkness and her knowledge of Cherokee stealth techniques to move through the compound undetected. Her goal wasn't just escape, it was intelligence gathering and elimination of Hassan's operational capability. Over the following nights, Alexis conducted what amounted to a one-woman special operations campaign against Hassan's forces. She eliminated sentries who worked alone, gathered intelligence about the compound's layout and defensive systems, and positioned herself to systematically destroy Hassan's entire organization. Her grandfather's training in psychological warfare proved as valuable as her physical skills. By making guards disappear without explanation, she was creating fear and paranoia among Hassan's men that was more effective than direct confrontation. Hassan's fighters began reporting strange sounds in the night, equipment that had been moved or damaged, and the growing realization that someone was moving through their supposedly secure compound with complete impunity. The second elimination came on the fifth night, when Alexis targeted the compound's communications specialist. Using stealth techniques learned from her grandmother, she infiltrated the communications bunker and eliminated the operator while gaining access to Hassan's entire intelligence network. From the captured communications equipment, Alexis learned the locations of other terrorist cells, planned operations against American forces, and Hassan's network of informants and suppliers. This intelligence would be invaluable for future American operations, but only if she could survive to deliver it. The third and fourth eliminations occurred on consecutive nights when Alexis eliminated the guards responsible for perimeter security. These operations required her to move through areas covered by multiple sentries, while avoiding detection by fighters who were becoming increasingly paranoid about the mysterious disappearances. By the seventh day, Hassan's compound was in a state of controlled panic. Half his guards had disappeared without explanation, his communications had been compromised, and his men were reporting encounters with an invisible enemy who seemed to know their every move. Hassan himself was beginning to understand that he had severely underestimated his prisoner. The American medic, who was supposed to have been broken and compliant, had somehow become a ghost that was systematically destroying his operation from within. "Find the American woman," Hassan ordered his remaining fighters. "She cannot have simply vanished. Search every inch of this compound." But Alexis was no longer hiding in the detention area. She had established a base of operations in the compound's maintenance tunnels, using her knowledge of building systems and Cherokee concealment techniques to create a command center that was invisible to Hassan's increasingly desperate searches. From her hidden position, Alexis could monitor Hassan's communications, track the movement of his remaining fighters, and plan her final assault on the terrorist leader who had thought he could break her spirit through intimidation and isolation. The intelligence she had gathered revealed that Hassan was planning a major attack on American forces. Within the next week, multiple terrorist cells were coordinating an assault on a forward operating base where hundreds of American soldiers would be vulnerable to coordinated suicide attacks. Alexis realized that simply escaping would not be sufficient. She needed to eliminate Hassan and his entire operational network to prevent the planned attack on American forces. What had begun as survival had evolved into a mission that could save the lives of her fellow soldiers. On the 8th night, Alexis began her final assault on Hassan's remaining forces. Using weapons captured from eliminated guards and improvised explosives created from medical supplies and maintenance materials, she conducted simultaneous attacks on the compound's weapons storage, communication center, and command bunker. The attacks were timed to create maximum chaos while preventing Hassan's men from coordinating an effective response. Explosions destroyed their heavy weapons. Communication failures prevented coordination between different areas of the compound, and psychological pressure from a week of mysterious disappearances had already broken their morale. Hassan's remaining fighters found themselves fighting an enemy who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, who knew their every move while remaining completely invisible. Many of them fled the compound rather than facing an opponent they couldn't understand or counter. The final confrontation came when Hassan, desperate and cornered, attempted to reach his emergency communication equipment to call for reinforcements from other terrorist cells. But Alexis had been waiting for exactly this moment, having anticipated his likely escape routes and emergency procedures. When Hassan entered the communications bunker, he found Alexis waiting for him with intelligence files that documented his entire network and planned operations. The American medic, who was supposed to have been broken by captivity, had instead become the instrument of his organization's complete destruction. "You were right about one thing," Alexis told Hassan as she prepared to eliminate the last threat to American forces in the region. "One American soldier couldn't last a week here. But I'm not just any soldier. I'm a Ranger medic who learned from Cherokee warriors and Green Beret legends. I don't just survive. I adapt, overcome, and eliminate threats to my fellow Americans." Hassan's death marked the end of a terrorist network that had been planning one of the largest coordinated attacks on American forces since the beginning of the Afghan conflict. The intelligence Alexis had gathered led to the disruption of multiple terrorist cells and the prevention of attacks that could have killed hundreds of American soldiers. When the rescue helicopter arrived at the compound's coordinates 3 days later following Alexis's emergency transmission, they found a single American soldier waiting with intelligence files that documented an entire terrorist network and a compound filled with eliminated enemy fighters. The pilot's report would become legendary in Special Forces circles. "We came to rescue one captured medic. Instead, we found one soldier who eliminated an entire enemy compound and prevented a major attack on American forces." Major Reynolds, the Special Forces officer who debriefed Alexis after her rescue, struggled to understand how a single soldier had accomplished what would normally require an entire special operations team. "Sergeant Morgan," he said, reviewing the intelligence she had gathered, "what you accomplished in 8 days is unprecedented. You didn't just escape from captivity. You conducted a complete intelligence operation while eliminating a terrorist network that threatened hundreds of American lives." Alexis looked at the officer who was trying to understand her experience. Knowing that no report could capture the reality of survival in enemy territory using skills learned from Cherokee grandmothers and Green Beret grandfathers. "Sir, I did what any Ranger would do. I adapted to the situation, used available resources, and eliminated threats to American forces. The enemy made the mistake of thinking that capturing me would break me. Instead, it gave me the opportunity to break them." 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Alexis Morgan was promoted to Sergeant First Class and offered assignment to the most elite Special Operations units. Her escape and subsequent elimination of Hassan's network became a case study taught at special operations schools worldwide. But more importantly, Alexis never again heard anyone question whether a female soldier could handle the most dangerous combat missions. Her weakened enemy captivity had proven that sometimes the most dangerous warrior is the one the enemy underestimates. Today, Master Sergeant Reaper Morgan trains special operations soldiers in survival techniques that combine modern military doctrine with Cherokee wisdom and Green Beret innovation. her students learned that true strength comes not from avoiding capture, but from turning captivity into opportunity. Have you ever been in a situation where others expected you to break, only to discover reserves of strength you didn't know you possessed? Alexis' story reminds us that sometimes our greatest victories come when we're cornered with nowhere to run except through our enemies. The terrorist commander who thought he could break one American soldier learned that some people become more dangerous when caged, not less. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted, and the predator discovers that the prey was actually the apex predator all along. If you believe that true warriors are forged in the moments when surrender seems like the only option, share this story. Because somewhere someone is facing impossible odds, not knowing that they're about to prove that the human spirit cannot be broken by those who mistake temporary advantage for permanent victory. Alexis Morgan didn't just survive enemy captivity. She transformed it into the enemy's worst nightmare, proving that sometimes the most dangerous place for your enemies is having you exactly where they think they want.